What's going on, folks? Your guy Tommy Gannon here, TG, here for Ice Cold Sports, America's Sports Show. Happy to be back with you guys. Today, as you notice, a little bit of a change of scenery. Thought I'd share the beautiful outdoors with the beautiful people. Look at that. A little bit to talk about today. We'll start off. So last night was Game 3 of the College World Series final. It was tied 1-1 after LSU won in 10 innings in the first game. And then the Gators blew them out in the second game. Looked like the Gators had them right where they wanted them. And not so much. Final score, LSU 18, Florida 4. LSU is your new national champions in college baseball. It was a tough day. It was a very tough day. I thought, so in the first inning, bottom of the first, Wyatt Langford hit a two-run home run. And I thought, okay, the Gators got this. The Gators got this. They got it. They got it. They got it. You know, they had Caglione on the mound, and they had him, obviously, the DH later on in the game. The Gators had this. They had to have this, right? No, not so much. Top of the second, Caglione gives up, 6 earned runs. It was a disaster. And then I ended up turning the game off, honestly. I think it was like 11-2. I turned it off. It was one of the worst games I've watched in a long time. Congratulations to LSU. You know, I honestly, legitimately believe that if you play this game again, play this game like 10 times, I think the Gators win like 7 out of those 10 times. Or play this series 10 times, I think the Gators win 7 out of these 10 times. It just sucks. What's crazy is in that first game, if the Gators could have that ball would have gone over his head. It was that close out there in left field, and they would have won in Game 1. Then they could have blown him out in Game 2 and won the whole series. Not so much. So, it's tough. Gators will bounce back, all that good stuff. But it's tough because Paul Skeens, who was like the big, star pitcher, like the best player in college baseball, star pitcher for LSU, they were like, if LSU needs him, he could be out there in the bullpen for him after, on like 3 days' notice after having 120 pitches against Wake Forest 3 days earlier, and they didn't even need him. That's how bad that game was. So, tough day for the Gators. Still great to be a Florida Gator, but tough day for the Gators. In other news, and I know it's a little bit slow, the slow time of year. Slow. We've talked about this a couple weeks ago. Don't complain about slow, the slow sports season. Enjoy the sports we have, but we get some football headlines. So, out of Michigan, it's being reported, Jim Harbaugh in practice is having beat Georgia periods, even though they haven't played Georgia since the college football playoff back in 2021 where they got blown out by Georgia. And some people are saying, what is this? This is dumb. This is stupid. What are you doing? Compare yourself to Georgia, 2-time national champions in a row, back to back. I'm going to be honest, folks. That's loser talk. What Harbaugh is doing here, that is winner stuff. If you want to win, you compare yourself to the best. You compare yourself to the best and not the rest. All right? All right. If you want to win a national championship, and that's what Harbaugh says, it is boom or bust this year with the kind of talent they have. They say this year, boom or bust on a national championship because guess what? We have the talent to do it. And if you want to win a national championship, there's one team you're probably in all likelihood going to have to go through in either the semifinal or the final, and that's the University of Georgia. And I gotta say, if you're trying to win a national championship, it only makes sense to be putting your eyes and aiming at Georgia. And this is what you got to do. This is what you got to do. And people say, well, they don't play each other enough. Michigan hasn't had the kind of success in the playoff and stuff like that. Listen. In terms of not playing each other enough and stuff like that and that kind of thing, back in the 90s, in the late 80s and stuff, it was Notre Dame and it was Miami. And it wasn't because, they had some type of historic type rivalry, really, or they were close to each other. They weren't. It was that they were both near the top of the rankings, and that's what mattered. And they didn't like each other because they knew they needed to beat each other to win a national championship. And it also reminds me a little bit, Bill McCartney great head coach, college football Hall of Fame head coach out of the University of Colorado. Back when Colorado stunk back in the early 80s, he looked around, looked at the state next door at Nebraska, who they played every year, and said, hey, these are our rivals. If we want to be the best, we got to compare ourselves to the best. And people laughed at him. They laughed and laughed their way all the way. But he laughed his way to the bank, and he won a national championship before Tom Osborne could win a national championship. So this is what winners do. Even though right now you can't compare the resume of Michigan and the resume of Georgia, if you want to win, this is how you do it. And this is what makes college football great, is when contenders are pushing up against each other and comparing each other to each other. And you say Michigan's not enough of a contender yet? Watch out, because with this kind of conditioning and putting this kind of period in place, they very may well be in the very close future. Finally, and I talked about this last week as well, so the Suns, they brought in Bradley Beal to make their new big three: Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal. And I was saying it was those three and then their center, Deandre Ayton, were the only four people on the roster with guaranteed contracts. And, I was saying, well, the thought process is they'll get rid of Ayton and they'll bring in some guys to get in some depth. And even if they do that, it could still be pretty light. Still pretty light around those three guys. Then it comes out, they're bringing him back. They're not sending him out. They're not trading him. At least it's cooled down. It doesn't look like they're going to trade him. What? They're supposedly right now bringing in Jabari Parker and Stanley Johnson, two guys that, were busts out of the lottery. They're bringing in those guys as like cheap muscle behind those three. What are you doing? What are you doing? So this is what you're going to do. You're going to have 3 Ferraris in the garage and then like one, caddy, and then a bunch of lemons surrounding them. It's 3 Ferraris, 1 caddy, and a bunch of lemons surrounding them. That's not a good lineup. That's not a good team. That only spells disaster, especially in the postseason, especially when you need bench depth in the postseason. It's not good. It's very bad. If I were them, and supposedly they were talking with the Mavericks about trading away Ayton, and supposedly that's all cooled down. So if I were them, I would definitely consider getting back on that trade bandwagon to be able to bring in real guys behind those 3. But I don't know. Maybe they can restructure some contracts, maybe move some money around to bring in a couple guys. But you're trying to bring in cheap help, and it's the weakest link. Bring in this kind of cheap help, and next thing you know, the chain breaks. All I'm going to say about that. Any case, folks, thank you all for watching and or listening. Please subscribe at IceGoldSPRTS on Twitter, Instagram, at Tommy SGAHAN on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Ice Cold Sports TikTok is my TikTok, just saying. And, of course, subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, Ice Cold Sports. Subscribe, like. Leave a comment. If you leave a comment, I will be sure to respond to it. Leave a criticism. Tell me how I'm terrible at this and how you want to punch me in the face, and I will respond to it. All right? Say something like that. I don't know. I don't care. As long as, it doesn't have too many four-letter words or whatever. Maybe 1 or 2, but not like 10 and 20 and some really bad ones. Then maybe I'll say it whatever on the air or whatever. In any case, folks, I'm Tom again, and this has been Ice Cold, but it isn't too cold out here. It is a beautiful day out here today. I'm going to be golfing later. I worked out earlier, and I don't, I did some deadlifts, and I'm worried about my form. I'm worried about my back and stuff like that when I'm playing. That could be tough. We'll see. I need to get better with my form. It's been a while since I've done deadlifts. Sports, see you guys.